Lisa Marie Montgomery's name is now etched in history, not just as a killer, but as the first woman executed by the U.S. government in nearly 7 decades. Her case was gruesome, chilling, and deeply tragic. But to understand how she ended up strapped to a gurney at Terre Haute Federal Prison, we have to go back to a cold day in December 2004. On December 16th, in the small town of Skidmore, Missouri, 23-year-old Bobbie Jo Stinnett, a dog breeder active in the rat terrier community, was 8 months pregnant and preparing to meet a woman who had contacted her online about buying a puppy. That woman was Lisa Montgomery. Lisa had told Bobbie Jo she was pregnant, too. She wasn't. She told her she wanted a puppy. She didn't. She wanted a baby, and she came prepared to steal one. In her jacket, a white cord. A kitchen knife. Lisa Montgomery was living a lie. She had convinced her family, friends, and even her husband that she was expecting a child. She had faked pregnancies before. She bought a fake belly. She prepared a nursery. But this time, she needed a real baby to keep the fantasy alive. And she was willing to kill for it. Lisa arrived at Bobbie Jo's house that afternoon. They played with the puppies, talked. Around 2:30 p.m., Bobbie Jo took a phone call from her mother, Becky Harper. She promised to pick her up from work an hour later. It was the last time anyone spoke to her. Inside that small home, no one knows exactly what words were exchanged, but it didn't take long for the encounter to turn into a crime scene. She used the cord first, cutting off her air supply until Bobbie Jo lost consciousness. Then came the knife. She sliced into the pregnant woman's abdomen. Bobbie Jo woke up. A struggle broke out. But Montgomery was stronger, more determined, and far more desperate. She strangled her again, this time until she stopped moving. Then, with cold precision, she cut the baby from Bobbie Jo's womb, clamped the cord, cleaned the infant, and disappeared. By 3:30 p.m., when Bobbie Jo didn't show, her mother grew worried. She walked to the house and walked straight into a nightmare. Red stains were everywhere. Her daughter's body was on the floor, torn open. She called 911. Telling the operator, it looked like her daughter's stomach had exploded. Paramedics rushed in, but it was too late. Bobbie Jo passed away at St. Francis Hospital in Ville. By that evening, a national manhunt was underway for the missing baby and whoever had taken her. The next day, FBI agents tracked Lisa Montgomery to her home in Melbourne, Kansas. When they arrived, Lisa was holding the baby. The child was alive. Lisa told investigators she had gone into labor while shopping and gave birth in a birthing center. She said the baby's name was Abigail, from the Bible, but there were no records, no witnesses, and no evidence to support her claim. It didn't take long before the truth unraveled. Lisa Montgomery was arrested, and the baby, miraculously unharmed, was returned to her grieving father. As the nation absorbed the horror of the crime, questions were asked. How does someone get to that point? So detached from reality, so desperate that they'd commit an act most people can't even imagine. Experts tried to answer that question. Dr. Catherine Porterfield, a psychologist specializing in trauma survivors, described Lisa as profoundly damaged. Not evil, shattered. Her childhood? Torture. She was repeatedly raped by her stepfather starting at age 11. He built a room in the back of their trailer where he assaulted her regularly, sometimes filming it. Her mother knew. And instead of protecting her daughter, she blamed her. When Lisa finally confided in someone about the abuse, her mother responded by tying her down, gagging her with duct tape, and threatening her life. Years of sustained trauma left Lisa with severe mental health issues. In prison, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, complex PTSD, psychosis, and dissociative identity disorder. Brain scans later showed damage to her temporal lobe, the part of the brain responsible for emotional regulation and impulse control. Despite these findings, Lisa's defense team failed her. Her lead attorney had no experience with capital cases. Her co-counsel had a track record of clients being sentenced to death. They didn't present the full extent of her abuse or mental illness. They didn't challenge the narrative that she was simply a cold, calculated killer. In 2007, Lisa Montgomery was convicted of federal kidnapping resulting in death and sentenced to death. She was transferred to the federal prison system, where she spent over a decade in near-total isolation. Over the years, mental health experts, human rights advocates, and legal professionals rallied around Lisa's case. They didn't deny the horror of her crime, but they argued that executing a severely mentally ill woman, a victim of lifelong torture, was inhumane. As her execution date approached, public pressure mounted. Her lawyers filed motions, citing her mental state and past trauma. On January 11, 2021, a federal judge granted a temporary stay. But it was overturned. On January 13, 2021, at 1:31 a.m., Lisa Montgomery was led into the execution chamber at the Federal Correctional Complex in Terre Haute, Indiana. Her last words were barely a whisper. No, as the lethal injection began, her chest heaved. Her fingers twitched. And then stillness. Lisa Montgomery was pronounced dead at 1:34 a.m. She was 52 years old. Her death sparked outrage across the country and around the world. Some saw justice. Others saw a deeply broken woman who had been failed by every system that should have protected her. Lisa's attorney, Kelly Henry, called it the craven bloodlust of a failed administration. She said Lisa's execution was nothing short of state-sponsored murder. In the end, Lisa Montgomery's story is not just about a crime. It's about trauma, failure, and the darkest corners of the human experience. It forces us to ask difficult questions about justice, mercy, and what it means to be truly accountable. Lisa committed a brutal, unforgivable act. But what made her capable of it? And was death the answer? For some, the answer is yes. For others, the horror didn't end with Bobbie Jo. It ended in that execution chamber in Terre Haute, where Lisa Montgomery took her final breath. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter from the vault.